And hello, we are back. It's Aarnimetsa from PokerImania.com, and we are back with Turbo 50-50s. Same game, same structure, same objective, just slower games. Like when a normal speed 50-50 takes about 40 to 45 minutes on average, these turbos are taking only 25 minutes on average, and they are going to... The average stack size is going to be slightly smaller, so there's going to be a bit less of situations that we are getting to play with deepish stacks.
And clearly you can see that there is more regulars than on the normal speed ones, I'd say.
Yeah.
And even though you haven't even marked all of those regulars, you still have some of them. So at least there's a couple of familiar names for me, even though I haven't played these for a while.
Actually, generally, I like to mark, if a player has the lifetime achievement, I'm usually straight marking them as a reg. Because in general, I think like someone can be a losing player and go for a supernova. But in general, I think for going for a lifetime achievement that requires about $180,000 of rake, I think generally pretty much all of those players with lifetime achievement haven't at least been total fishies. So that's going to be some info you can use. Somebody goes for a pot when we are hitting a really nice, and we are going for a big value against this MacGyver. And we got it all. We didn't get it all. He still has like his whisk knife and 1,100 chips left, but...
That's what you do not do with your aces. Don't limp them. You just give up an opportunity to your other players to just hit way too good with crappy hands.
You are saying that Queen 3 is a crappy hand?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And
are you disagreeing with me?
And in these games, as we know that these games are starting with 50 big blind chip stacks, the normal speeds are starting as well, so there will be less spots where you can set mine profitably. So that's an adjustment you need to do from going from 9 max hit and goes to 50-50s. And let me correct you, like, in the world, there practically are no bad products. There are just bad pricing. And it's like Queen 3 off. If it's a bad hand, it's not a bad hand if we can play it for free.
True.
So, like even Deuce 3 off, oh well, it's going to be, when we are in the big blind, it's going to be like, we can't defend our big blind right now, so it's going to be a crappy hand. But if there are people limping and you get to realize your equity for free, it doesn't feel that crappy.
Well, it's easy to say after you flop the nuts. But I get your point. And actually, as we discussed at the last few minutes of the first session of today, you could just check the info box available. So you'll see all the time how many players there are on the table.
Yeah, that's something I should do.
I know that if you played these games regular, you had that done automatically, but since it's not your primary game,
I think it just doesn't work.
Yeah, for some weird reason.
I think I have had an automatic script to do it, but with PokerStars 7 it doesn't work, so that's why I'm clicking them manually.
So you have 15 seconds of time bank available, 5 players paid as usual, and what else?
It's going to be quicker, like in normal speed we had a 16-second time bank, and those are a bit better for these poker streams, because when we are having a lot more time to discuss the hands, it also relieves some of the pressure we can have. And Skyphosis, I think that's going to be a bit fishy when you're saying that because every hand can hit a boat. But it's only about the price.
But the boat can also sink when the time goes by. Unfortunately.
Boats rarely sink.
So what do sink?
Submarines.
Ah. Like Russian submarines. Oh dear. I think we have quite a lot of listeners from Russia, so...
And Sweden.
Let's not make any more submarine jokes. And I'm not going to sing anymore, or at all, about yellow ones.
Yeah, if we would have done a Swedish special during the summertime, our intro tune would have been the Yellow Submarine for sure.
Yeah. Actually, there's a really cool place in Tallinn where you can go to a submarine. In Lennusadam. You should definitely visit that when you come here. It's an awesome place. And back to the games.
But there's like practically nothing happened. Like this pocket nines, if UTG plus 1 opens, UTG plus 2 3 bets. In middle position we are folding practically everything aside from queens and better, I think.
Yeah. In Finnish there is a saying that says kerjätä verta nenästään. And it means that you're just trying to get blood out of your nose if you're going into situations like that.
It's going to be that this guy's going to be opening with a tight range. This guy's a reg, so he knows it. And I think that when he then goes for it, it's going to be a really good hand. And if it's going to be like jacks and better and ace king, and some regs are flatting ace kings in these spots, I think it's going to be better to flat ace king in the spot. So then something like pocket queens is going to be the first hand that starts to make sense against when we are thinking about both of these players' ranges in general.
I hope we get to see that. Hunter can be there with anything, really, but...
Yeah, as he's a tablet player, he's having an animal as the avatar. It can be anything. Like usually babies and animals, usually those are that I'm thinking that it's going to be a player that I want to play against.
But generally, I think you shouldn't use any avatars, because then you stick to the other player's mind better. And I think that perhaps you don't want to do that. Because, for example, at Pesno, I remember that picture from like a year ago or something. I couldn't have remembered the name, but the picture, for sure. So if you want to stay anonymous and a little bit hidden, then just why draw any more attention to you if you don't need to.
And it's easy when you have written notes from like some guy with a funny looking fish in the picture. Then it's going to be pretty easy to remember it on the table, like when you are getting more. And as Calleon said that most guys don't have a 3-bet bluffing range there in early position, I agree with you completely. Like the 3-betting range is going to be really strong, and I think it's going to be just jacks plus pretty much. And like 30% of ace kings and 70% of ace kings are getting flatted, and Like ace queen suited, ace queen is going to get flatted with the whole range. With 2 overcards, when we are getting such a good price, like we are playing a $450 pot with just paying 60 chips more, it's going to be something that's going to be good, even with 2 overcards. And when we are not hitting our overcards and our opponent shoves, I think it's time to fold. Our opponent had a bit of a better hand on the flop than I would have thought.
Yeah, for sure. Didn't see that one coming. But I think he's anyway a little bit of a loose cannon, so it's okay for paying for a small bet.
If I would have like 2 really tight regs behind me, I could open with 10-4 off, but when these guys are behind me and the other guy is tablet player, I don't think that 10-4 off is going to be that profitable. And Calleon has a really good point that why he doesn't personally sometimes have a 3-betting range versus UTG reg at all, when it might be better to just flat call your whole range. If you are flat calling your whole range, then you are also hiding your best hands, and you can make yourself harder for your opponent to play against.
That's true. And I think I have played like tens of thousands of hands against Sunny 220V. At some point he was like arch enemy or something. It just felt that he was always flopping the nuts against me. Okay, the case wasn't that, but it just felt like it for some point.
And usually it's the better if you are, like, I think one of the strengths of sit and goes, now that this guy is going to be a loose cannon, Fiska opens for 3x. It's actually going to be really hard with pocket nines. If this guy folds, then it's going to be really hard. I think that this guy will have such a wide range in this situation.
I think you should mark that because Fiska's raising amount is so devious that even though you win death vault quite often.
Actually, I'm trying to find out the Fiska K in any other tables so I can write a note on that. But I agree that the raise sizing was pretty... It was going to be a pretty awful situation.
Because anyway, he had the bigger stack, and you should be more worried about him than the other guy.
And Skyphosis said that what do you prefer, playing in sets or continually regging to new ones? I'm thinking that if you are trying to get the best ROI possible, then it's going to be easier to do it in sets. But if you are aiming to do the best hourly possible, you should reg continuously. Like, there is going to be just so many good things about regging continuously. Like, you can game select a lot better. And you are also... The minus point for regging continuously is that you are not going to be able to concentrate on the late games as much as you would if you are playing in sets. Like, the sets are great because when you are at the late game and the money matters more, then you are having lower amount of tables and you are usually doing better decisions. But continuous sets are going to be a lot better for volume. And they're going to be a lot better for volume, and they are going to be they're going to be a lot better for volume, and they're going to be a lot better for game selection than if you are playing sets, you want to get your set open as quickly as possible to maximize the time or minimize the time that it takes to ramp up your set. And then it's like you need to add like 10 tables at once. But if you're playing 10 tables and you're playing continuously, you'll need to add just one table. Like if you're playing 10 tables, you'll need to add one table every about 2 minutes. So then you can game select like the best table that will open during the 2 minutes. And if you are going to for the 10 tables, you would prefer to get the 10 tables going in 5 to 8 minutes.
I think one advantage of the 50-50s is that when you are playing continuously and you stack your tables, and even though if you take all the bubbles away from the main stack and you lose a table, you never know whether it was because you lost or somebody else dropped somebody else and the bubble bursted. And personally for me it helped a lot that I didn't see always that, okay, I went all in, the table disappeared and I had a small stack so I lost. But the tables just dropped and I could have won, I could have lost, but it didn't matter because I couldn't know that for sure.
Yeah, practically in every other sit and go structure, you are knowing if you are heads up and you are winning the last hand or not. And practically always when you are dropping a table, you feel a bit bad because you are losing money at the moment. But in 50-50s, you can play really long sessions and you can have like no idea did you win money or did you lose money because the tables can close because you got all in and lost, or the tables can close because some two other players did get it in together and one of those lost and the bubble bursts. And that's actually that's like hidden EV in the games.
Yeah, for sure.
We are just getting a call. It's going to be nasty.
Less than pot left.
Less than pot left, but I think like I can't bet small, I can't shove. And I think that my ace high is still going to be good some of the time. Like there are a lot of hands that our opponent can have, especially when he checks back the flop. So there are a lot of bluffs in the range as well.
It must be because if he had flopped something, he probably should have bet because he wouldn't want to see any bigger cards.
On the turn and river, yeah. And that's something that with the ace queen, even though we are having just an ace high, we are still having enough equity to carry on. So it was all about an equity play against his range. And tightening his range from that on the flop I think that the range for him to check back would be really strong hands because he will get the money in anyways. And also weak hands that haven't hit. I think in general the opponents are betting too much of their great hands even though they are having, and so that their range will be a lot focused on weak hands that have missed the flop in the situation. And so on the turn and river when he bets, even though there are new cards that may hit our opponent, I still think that they are going to, or the equity doesn't change that much. There are like two guys that I remember from before the bubble that they were pretty aggressive. And I'm having a small trouble in here. Do I min raise or do I just open fold? Shoving isn't profitable. I know that for sure. And if these guys are really, really loose, they are going to do horrible things to our equity.
And the same situation continues.
Yeah, the hand is like a bit too good to fold. And we are going with a more pot controlling line here. And we are carrying on pot controlling even though we hit a lot of showdown equity in this situation.
If he had bet the river,
I would have called.
What did he have? No,
Jack 10 suited.
So straight drawn turn, which he bet with.
Yeah. If we would have hit the queen, I think we would still have called the half a pot. Because if we are hitting our flush, we are having some implied odds against this Magister 2012. And as Kelleonis said, that it's nasty spot with ace-7 because of the bigger stacks and also because if big blind shoves, you are not in a great shape. I agree with you, but like what is your equity come from in sit and goes? It comes from playing the non-obvious hands better than your opponents. Like everyone can play a pocket aces or pocket kings pre-flop with pretty close to the optimal. But when we are thinking about hands like hands that are going to be nasty, they are
like Jack 8 off.
Jack 8 off, it's going to be nasty, but from small blind against big blind, I think it's profitable. There are two flush draws, so I think it's profitable to go for it here.
Nice stack. That meant lots of bucks.
I think that was a $30 game as well, so I think that means like lots of bucks times lots of bucks equals a crap ton of bucks.
Like that's the specific calculation for these games.
And ace-7 suited, I think it's going to be good enough most of the time. In here, I'm going, even if a NAS equilibrium is going to state that 5-3 suited is not going to be a shove, I'm going to shove it anyway because I don't think that our opponent will call as wide as they should in that situation.
Wouldn't you think about inducing with ace-king at that spot?
Like they are having less than 10 big blinds, and this guy is a reg, so I think I'm going to get him in wider if I shove. If both of these guys would have been randoms, I could have min raised. But against a reg in the big blind that's having a larger stack, I'm thinking that shoving is going to be way better in general. And Skyphosis said, unfortunately, another 30. Oh noes!
Next time.
But there will be some 30s action.
2 of those left. Ship them.
And as we can see in here, we are having a lot of regs, and the regs in general are playing pretty tight. And I think in these games you are having an advantage on your opponents if you are playing more aggressively than a general reg, especially against those regs. So by stealing a lot, I think that most of the regs are not well equipped in handling wide steals starting from the early on.
And if you spot a reg that steals, for example, min raising 10 big blinds and is able to fold that, then it's definitely noteworthy because that's something that it's not that common, but it does happen by some of those people.
And sometimes it's a really good exploitative play if our opponents are folding too much in those situations. So it might be fine to raise fold with 10 big blinds or less. But it's going to be way profitable if you are knowing the opponents that are capable of raise folding with a really short stack size. Sorry, my tongue gets twisted. It's used to Finnish and trying to do English is sometimes really hard. And in these situations there are also going to be nasty spots when you are having, and in here actually 7 queen off with about 10 big blinds each. If this Ollum would have been like next one on the chopping block, I think it's going to be pretty close, because if the shortest stack folds, then it's generating immense pressure on all the guys after. So queen 7 might have been a shove if these stacks would be in a different order, I think.
And that's something you wouldn't do when playing 9 max probably. But it's a bit different situation because it's about the survival, and if there's a small stack and he folds, it means a lot more than usually.
Actually, when there are 7 players remaining, so scratch that, because there needs to be 2 players out, and then we can exert a lot less pressure than we could if it would be in the bubble. So that's why we are using these info boxes, because then we'll know that we are in the bubble or we are not in the bubble.
But I get it's easy to make mistakes. I have done those myself too, even though you play a lot. You just get ahead of yourself, and then you think about all the good possibilities you can do.
And there have been like a lot of, on the top right game, there has been a lot of hands that would have been great shoves, but then someone has shoved from the earlier positions and made it then. And in here, because we are lost in chips, we are taking more risks. Because if we are just folding, we are going to lose the game. And something like ace-10 suited, probably ace-jack off is going to be a good call in that situation against the largest stack. Probably even a bit wider.
I think he was doing the shove with a really wide range, because he was the biggest stack and he was a wreck. So he knew he could be doing that with a
but there will still be a risk premium involved in getting in the hand.
Now you could show the lobby and the chips distribution to everybody to see. Oh, that's the new lobby. I'm not used to it yet.
It says it here. Half of the field will be paid 14.31, so the buy-in minus rake, and plus 47 cents per 100 chips in their finishing stack.
So the bigger stack you'll have when the bubble bursts, the more money you'll get. And if you'll get like something 12,000 chips, it's like awesome. And of course you aim for that.
And when Callion says that your range against the knowing opponent would be a lot larger, so let's mark the hand. It's always good to have some marked hands. And Skyphosis asked, do you mark hands and take notes afterwards or while 20 tabling? Some notes I can write while playing, but some notes are going to be... And I think most of my notes that I have written on the software are notes that I have... Like, I have looked a regs game later on, and then I have put all the hands that I have seen the regs cards in, and then I'm just playing the hands, and then I'm marking the stuff that I see. And we got 2 jacks and we lost them all. We lost probably with all the jacks, pocket jacks we got here today.
Should we draw a conclusion that never play jacks? No, it's just bad luck.
Yeah. I'm thinking that we can do some later analysis, and we are trying to have a small amount of... Actually, what's the graph looking like today? Like about $0 equity and losing $120. Not the best. Not the best situation. What's the buy-ins and?
You ran
about 0 buy-ins, so exactly 0 buy-ins and about 6 buy-ins. It's just that we didn't pay. There's the one game that we made the money with no chips, so even though we made the money, we still lost the rake. And there are most of the big games we did not finish in the money. But there's the my report, so there's the first, and this is probably the most important hand. Like, what can we play against knowing reg in this spot? And Callion said that our range should be pretty wide here. So let's go to Hold'em Resources Calculator, because this will be such an easy hand to look. Because with a capable opponent, we can assume that he's going to be quite close to Nash Equilibrium, in my opinion. So it's going to be a really easy hand to look through. We did a basic hand and we did paste in the stack sizes. I'll show it to you the next time around.
And remember to switch the format to 50-50.
I think it should be. So Chaos should be shoving about 90%, and actually when I said about the ace-9 suited and ace-10 off, I would pretty much on the money with that. On
that's
the ace
like magical.
Side. Actually, and this is about if our opponent shoves about every pretty hand. So this is about the risk premiums, and I would probably think that with Callion that I'm thinking that something like a5 suited is going to, or ace4 suited is going to be a fine call. Queen jack suited, queen 10 suited, king jack off, because I'm willing to take a negative edge pretty much in this hand too, because our situation is that we are far behind the other guys. It's going to be the bubble. If we fold this hand, we are going to be left with 2.9 big blinds, and that's less than half of the number 5 guy. So in this situation, we need to take more risks than ICM would dictate for us to get better equity spots in the later stages of the tournament. So I think when I'm seeing the numbers in here, I'm thinking that we can go somewhat wider, but not a lot wider. And I think the fact that you should like know the situation of this sit and go that you are in, like how your equity changes, how your stacks playability is going to be, how the other guys are going to play it. Like in here we are having at least 4 regs in the table. And if we are having 4 regs on the table, then it's going to be like, is there going to be some short stack that's going to lose his equity and lose his mind, then we probably are not going to any minus EV calls. If there are lunatics that will switch the equities around.
But basically, if you think there is no crazy man just wanting to get rid of his chips before you, then you need to play accordingly.
And this was a hand that I raised. Then like 3 seconds later it was, I'm getting shoved on. Like there's a guy that has had, when he has had a big stack, he had shoved basically every hand and 3-bet every hand. So this is like, here, take my money. But
and you don't want to do that, really.
Yeah, you don't want to give your money away. So we can actually do this with 2 different options. If we know that there's this guy, what could we shove here? That could we go for a shove here with something like ace-10 suited? And we are doing that by pasting this from clipboard and having additionally allow shoves, so we can define some more ranges. And advanced hands in 50-50s are usually taking forever to calculate. And the reason is that when you are calculating an advanced hand, the load gets a lot higher the more players are involved in the hand. So like the more one player more, it takes 10 times more time to calculate, because there will be so many more scenarios to calculate. But I think usually Kaleon is on the money with the most of his thoughts from or in 50-50s. So, and in here it would suggest that we would race with something like, we would have a pretty polarized range. Like, this is actually a really good implementation of polarized range, that we would be min raising, like we would be min raise calling with aces to 10s and ace queen suited, ace king off, I think pretty much against everyone. This Dayah call, if we are changing that his range, that he's going to be shoving a lot more, how would it change? Or let's say 50%, because even if it's 85%, we don't have that many hands on him, and we are opening from UTG, so I think that our opponents, even though they are crazy, they are probably still going to be less crazy. And Skyphosis said that that's why he's SNE, right? He's SNE because he has been grinding like a small animal during the last parts of the year.
Most of the parts of the year.
Yeah.
You don't get Supernova Elite just by laying around. That's for sure.
And actually, if we are having an opponent that shoves against us, the 49%, then we can only min raise. We can min raise practically the same hands. We are added pocket nines, but the min raise folds are only cutting down to only 4 hands. So we are like, before we had 9% more hands as bluffs here, but it will make a lot less sense for min raise fold. Min raise fold against a guy that shoves a lot, so then we are folding a lot less.
But those are really borderline hands anyway.
And if we are looking at the other way around, then I think this guy is probably somewhat more aggro. Not 1500%, but I think he can be calling probably a bit wider than he should. And if we are looking at Nash calculations, we are seeing that there are at least 2 regs on the table. And Skyphosis, I agree that it's still beastie to do it with the current state of high stakes sit and goes and medium stakes sit and goes.
Well, this is the bad part of analyzing the 50-50s, because there's always at least 6 players left.
Yeah, and this is going to be like the quick hands. And like, if we are thinking that our opponent is calling a bit too wide, we could still be shoving, like the ace 10 off would be teeny tiny bit profitable as a shove. I would probably like to shove something like 9s to 6s though. But and ace kings off and ace queen suit, ace queen off. I think like ace queen off would be profitable to induce as well, but it would be more profitable to shove. So this is one of those weird situations that ICM is making a situation that even if we are getting the ace queen off, even though we are more likely to get it in and get it in good, like we are getting 60%-ish equity against the 60% or 50% hand, we are still going to be better off if our opponent folds for about 40% more of his range. Because then we are getting more equity from him just folding than... And that's one of those parts why it sucks to be a medium stack and not a big stack in the 50-50s. And Kaleon, I think that when you added 50-50s and you didn't like play, I think like if you are wanting to add 50-50s to your sit and go grinding set, you'll pretty much need to first like play a month of those 50-50s and really work your ranges that it comes automatically to you that what you are doing in the 50-50s. Because there are so many different situations for the 50-50s that you need to take into account. And they are so different in many regards. So I think if you are just adding 50-50s to the grinding schedule, I think in that situation you are probably making the adjustment take a lot longer than like diving first into 50-50s. 50-50s for some time and learning the structure a lot. Because I remember that when I did the challenge against Kuutossilli, I had some problems that I was really good at. 9 max hypers, 6 max hypers, I had really good results on those. But it still took me a week of like playing 10 hours a day and analyzing spots for 2 hours a day to get my head around the 50-50s and really increase my equity to the levels that I think that are profitable and would have been enough to win the challenge.
It's a very interesting format. It has its twists, but then you need to just learn them and know when to abuse and when to just be really, really careful. But all in all, I like the format and I probably still would be playing that even, but it just got so wreckfested at the time when I quit playing those. It was sad though.
Like you played from $15 games to $100 games, and then just one moment you are wondering about it that if there are sometimes 9 regs at $100 or $60 games, that what's the point? And like if you are selecting your games, then most of your games will be $15 games.
And even $15 games started to look like there's already 8 players I recognize they are regs, and then I should go dive in. Like nobody's going to win money in those situations. That's why I switched the games, but I really like the format. I think it's really cool. And
it practically only requires more casual players flocking to 50-50s. Because it's also a great format when you are starting the games, because even if you are playing more hands, you are making less mistakes. And I think that if you are starting off and you are starting off with 50-50s, it's going to be a softer start for you than in pretty much any other format.
Because you don't need to worry about heads-up play or 3-max play.
Yes, so you can pretty much just focus on the early game and the middle game.
True. So you don't need to be a heads-up master in those to win lots of bucks.
I think like also in the games that it becomes even more important for you to be an aggressive reg in the games. When there are like 7 or 8 regs a game, or 6 other regs, it's not only going to be that, like in some games you can just try to get the maximum out of the recreational players and lose the least that you can on other regs. But I think like in these games, some of the regs are pretty complacent in their really tight playstyle. That I think that there will be opportunities in getting money by playing really aggressively on many spots, and some of the weaker regs are going to give you a lot of extra equity in the early and mid game by playing their tight game plan.
True.
And I think that's going to be it. Thank you for watching. And please give me some ideas. What should we do during next Sunday's coaching night? What games do you want to see? There's a feedback thread on www.pokerimania.com/forum. And if you are going to sleep, have a good night. If you are still playing poker, may this be a winning night for you. Bye!
Good night.